one and all. Welcome to another episode of Baggers Chat. My name is Mitch Pattinson, and as always, I'm joined by Ethan Daffy. And of course, we are reviewing our 17-point loss to the Melbourne Football Club. Of course, the final scores were Carlton 6-8-44 to Melbourne 8-13-61. Before we move on to initial thoughts, Daff, how are you, mate? I know that you were at the game. How did you see the game to start off? And this is going to be a pretty quick episode because I don't think we'll spend much time in this club.
No, I'm good personally, in my personal life, apart from Carlton. But no, I was there on Friday night, and you could feel it again in the crowd. There was this nervous, what's going to happen? Like, it was almost predictable what was going to happen. It's becoming predictable, and which is predictably bad, which is not good at all. For me, I thought the first 10, 15 minutes we were in the game. I thought we were actually at quarter time. I know we were down a couple goals, but realistically, it should have been even or up at quarter time. I've been saying this the last few weeks. It's we were having a crack. I don't think the effort's not there. Seriously, as a whole, I don't think the effort's not there. The effort is there. I just don't think we're good enough. Skill-wise, but that first 10, 15, I don't know if I'm wrong, but I thought we were actually in the game pretty well. We were up to the challenge and hitting tackles and winning the ball, but it's the same old story, Pato, isn't it? Bad football leads to losses and scoring. We just cannot score. Like, you got a half a footy with 2 goals. You're not winning games like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. And so we'll go through the quarter breakdown, of course. So the quarter time score was 21, Melbourne to Carlton 8. Halftime was 36, Melbourne to Carlton 17. 17 points. Like, that is unheard of. So 3/4 time was Melbourne 53 to Carlton 36. We almost doubled our scores. We did double our score. And then Melbourne 61 to Carlton 44 to finish the game. But as you just said, then we just cannot find a way to score. We mentioned every single week, we've been focusing a lot on our defenders and how we defend the game. How are we meant to defend a game if we're conceding 61 points? Yes, that's okay. But also, how are we defending a game when we're only kicking 44 points? Like, we can't rely on, we have to try and get the opposition to be under 44 points. And in the past few weeks, we haven't scored more than 60, I don't think. Like, by memory, I know it's either been around either the 50 mark, if not lower. So Voss has been so focused on the whole defensive structure and making sure that is spot on, and make sure, and credit to them. I think the defenders have been really good. But also, you're meant to attack the game, and it's just funny because we always see in that, like, the second half of the last quarter, we always see a new sort of style when we actually get their shots on goal. And I'm thinking to myself, where is this in the first half? And of course, that's a little bit of Melbourne dropping off their form because they know that they're going to win the game. But there's another side of it where there's no way we are not taking those risks, like the risk. And I think Vossi said something to do with like, we actually took on the game in that last quarter. And I'm like, well, where was it in the first quarter? Where was it in the second quarter? 8 points we scored in the first quarter.
Yeah,
that is putrid. Like, that is just So we'll move on to, of course, the initial thoughts, and we'll say a few comments before. I'll say a few comments before I move on to you, Daffy boy. But I just have to start off with what a shit game of football it was. It was just not. It shows that we are very ordinary, but it shows that Melbourne is quite ordinary as well. So I don't know if that was just them playing very poorly. I think it was. I think they'll start to find their form. I think that will actually help them for the long run, because that's sort of when they're playing very bad and they find a way to win, it makes us look even worse. It just looks shocking. So, Daff, initial thoughts, mate. What did you think of that whole game as a generic whole, I guess?
Yeah, so, my old man's a big Demons man, and every year we go, it's our kind of little family thing. We go to Melbourne Carlton. He comes to most Carlton games anyway, but this one's it's always a bit weird because obviously Melbourne's my second team in terms of, my old man goes for him. So I keep an eye on him most of the year. And I could kind of tell the last few weeks the way they've been playing. I know they played pretty well over in Port and only lost just to Freo, but you could tell they're just slightly off. And you could tell that the other night they were terrible. Like they were just making some really bad errors, and like you said, it's just embarrassing that we lose to a team that's playing that way. Because I tell you right now, if they were playing that way and we were playing the way we were last year, we would have won the game by about 50 points. So, yeah, ordinary. They were ordinary, but they'll take the win, obviously. Like you said before, I think our defence was very good. I thought we were quite sound down there. I thought their forward entries were putrid as well, to be honest with you. But I thought Wiedering is superb. Again, I thought Brody Kemp was probably almost our best on ground.
Spot
on. Which comes to my thought: what is he doing in the twos? What are we waiting for there? It's just that connection. I feel like the connection to our forwards is just not good enough, and our forwards aren't doing enough. Apart, I think Charlie and Harry do their thing, but where was Owies? Where was Mollop? Where was I think at some points of the game we had Akers off for half forward at some stage. I think that's because Sauce went down, but this year where to from here? And there's been reports there's been a big meeting at the club this morning. So there was all, rumours start to come around. Oh, the coach, It won't be the coach. But I did say it after the game, I said if it comes to next year and we're in the same spot next year, then it comes on the coach, because it's like, Jesus, like, are we really serious about ourselves? But I agree with a lot of people. Clean out is needed. There's players out there that should not be playing for this football team, and they're not good enough. This group isn't good enough. We've done nothing, Pato, with this list. We've come ninth. Come ninth, Pato. Is that the maximum we want to reach with this list? It clearly isn't good enough, and we've got holes in it that we need to fix. So, it's just, what is it, round 12? My God.
It's already starting to look like it's season over. I mean, of course, mathematically, it's not season over, but with us, because we're so into the club, we know a lot about the club. Very hard to come back from here to make a charge towards finals, unless there is just a drastic change, but I just don't see it, because how can you change something, firstly, mid-season, but something as big as this?
Yeah.
It will be a pretty good effort, but it's just not looking good. So you mentioned there one of the positives, 100% was Brody Kemp. I'm so glad you said that, because Brody Kemp was by far best on ground for mine. Either him or maybe Harry Mackay. It's great that Harry Mackay got a little bit more of his confidence back, I guess, in a sense. But Brody Kemp was fantastic. I know that he started the game a little bit more on Fritsch, and Fritsch played okay. He didn't play insanely good, but he didn't play poorly either. So I think Kemp, when they kind of changed around, also when Lewis Young went forward, that was also the wide flag moment when Vossi chugged him. I just don't know what that was about. I know that we spoke about in the VFL, he was in the forward. Maybe that was a genuine...
I think that was... I didn't mind it, to be fair. I get what you're saying with the white flag, like the Liam Jones moment. But, no, I thought the Youngie actually contested pretty well when he went forward. It kind of gave us something. I don't know. There was something different about it. I don't know, but back to you, mate. It's just I did mind it in terms of he was going to the ruck. You know what I mean? It wasn't like he was just getting pulled forward the whole time. But that's another issue with our ruck stocks currently. Oh my God.
Was that due to, so with Lewis Young going forward, I think it was through that fourth quarter, that's when I noticed it, because I was on that end when I was on the cheer squad end, so I was sitting around that area. Was that due to Sauce going off and being that second ruck for most of the game, and Lewis Young not really doing much? I mean, he played okay, Lewis Young, and in the back line, but I don't think a lot of their key forwards would dominate, and especially Kemp was playing quite well. Probably having like a McGovern as that Lewis Young role, and then Kemp can be that little bit more of a key defender. But do you think that was more like, how did you see, I guess, Silvani's game as a second ruck? But do you think moving forward, if those are the only two options for our second ruck, do you think it will be Lewis Young? Like, which one impressed you more, Lewis Young or Jack Silvani as that second ruck?
I still don't really know Jack Silvani's role. in the
Yeah.
team. It's like he's important. Obviously, he went down to injury. That's it's pretty harsh to judge his game, but he fights hard. He fights hard, Sauce. But I feel like with Lewis Young, he's got a bit of height about him. Maybe you just need to change something up because who we got next week? Essendon, Draper and Phillips. So you're going to have to need probably two blokes who are capable. But I'd imagine Sauce will be out next week through injuries. So maybe we put Lewis Young as that second ruck. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So we'll now just move on to a generic question, I guess, and it really is, how much more can our supporters take? So, of course, 2015, we went through that major rebuild. Everything was cleaned out. Players were cleaned out. Coaches were cleaned out. All that was completely cleaned out. In that 2016 season, our supporters were saying, wow, if this is the rebuild, imagine us in 5 years. So we're almost 8 years down the track. And we're now at a stage where we are in the same position. We're not necessarily in the same position, but we are around that mid-range. And I would much rather be in that rebuilding stage at the bottom end of the ladder, knowing that we're rebuilding towards going into that premiership window, rather than being around this mid-range. That's one thing. I don't want to be around this mid-range, not contending for finals, not having any chance for finals, but also not having any future for a couple of years' time. Having a plan, I guess, a 5-year plan where in this time in 5 years, we want to make sure that with this rebuild, everything goes okay. For 5 years' time, we are going to be well and truly up in the finals race. We haven't played finals since 2013, and even that year, we finished 9th. So we weren't even meant to be in the finals. So 2011 was realistically our last time that we made finals genuinely, and we made the semi-finals, of course, and we lost to West Coast. But with that, we haven't had any success since then. And we are quite young supporters in terms of, I guess, Carlton supporters as a whole. A lot of Carlton supporters have seen premierships, blah, blah, blah. They see the game a lot differently now. And I reckon they're probably hurting as well because they've seen the success of the club, and now they're seeing how they're going now. But with us, this is all we know. We don't know anything else. So the question is, how much more can our supporters take? Because we can't go through yet again another failed rebuild, and then next year we think to do another rebuild because we're just going to think, oh, well, this is going to be the same thing as 2016. So how much more can these supporters take, Daff?
Well, me personally, I can't really take it anymore. I've always been that kind of optimistic guy when we've been shit going, oh, there's always next week, but it's come to a time where we've got a list that really should be making finals footy and winning finals, and we're so far off the mark. It is unbelievable. It's not like we're just out of form. This is like it's really, really bad, and you could tell in the stadium on the weekend, on Friday, sorry, there was less Carlton supporters there, which shows, like, I don't blame them. People go, oh, where are they? But seriously,
Exactly.
what do we rock up and watch a team kick 44 points and play the least exciting brand of football in the whole competition?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, it's unenjoyable to watch. Even when we kick goals, it's like, it's so hard to watch. It's more pain again this season. And touch on the rebuild. I think rebuilds are a thing of the past, to be honest.
Yeah.
Teams like Hawthorn are currently doing it, but that's because they got to a point where they were pushing for finals for a little bit too long and hit rock bottom. But we're at a point where we don't need a rebuild, but I think we just need a bit of a rejuvenation of the list in terms of getting rid of some of the uncontracted guys at the end of the year and trading them out, whether it be Fishers or whoever. There's got to be, I think there's 7 to 10 guys out of contract this year, so I'd imagine there'll be a bit of moving around. And once again, trade period. We don't want to talk about trade period, but it's going to be important again.
Yeah,
it's going to be extremely important. I think we need to get a few guys in that are solid contributors. They're role players and they win games of football. So, not these big targets where we're throwing 800K. Like that started to get ridiculous at one point. It was like the Carlton of old, back before salary caps existed, where Carlton were the biggest team in the land and we could get the best players because we had the most money. So it just doesn't work like that anymore. I feel like we had that mentality for 20 years onwards, and it's not the way it works.
Yeah.
I think recruitment is so important, whether they're, top end players or role players. So I can't take anymore. Obviously we're going on Sunday night, and Jesus, if we don't particularly like the Bombers, and I think if they put us away hard, then I think supporters are going to come attacking again, both Vossi and the playing group.
Yeah. So we'll transition back to what you said earlier to do with the meeting. We aren't too sure as us members. We aren't too sure exactly what that was all about. I'm sure it was definitely to do with our current state in the club right now, what they're doing, but also looking at all sorts of things, like whether it's the players are performing. I'm sure they would have looked at some match vision on Friday night to actually see what the players are doing, what their option was, what their in the moment, what their decision making was, and also probably seeing at halftime if there was any shift in our coaching change as well, like if there was any changes in that sense. So with that, because I know that's just another thing at the start of the week after a loss, there's just another thing to get the players, to get the members, back onto the, I wouldn't say bandwagon, but just to get the supporters back to kind of believing that this season isn't over. I know that's, of course, the biggest thing about marketing. You want to try and market the club as much as possible to show that the members, that show us members that we still have hope within the club. But they can't do this every week. So I know I have just put a line through you. I am not going to change my mind until you go out there on game day and show me a difference. I'm not going to fall for their Cripps has had a go at the media, or the club has had a review of the game and there's going to be big changes at the end of the week, or there's going to be I don't know. I'm just not going to listen to any of the media stuff that come out. I don't care. I would rather the club just stay quiet this week. Don't come out with any press conferences.
Emails, fucking emails. I don't fucking
care.
email.
Yeah, but they've done that. Like Luke Sayers has done it the past 2 weeks, saying it's not acceptable. We know that. We realized this 3 or 4 weeks ago. Yeah. So we knew this. So it's now down to where we actually need to go out. We need to watch the performance, and you show us on game day that whatever you're training through the week, you can actually do it on match day, which is why you do the training. It's just unbelievable. So one more question before we move on to a little bit more stuff. So obviously this right now seems to be a wasted season. You mentioned there about the trade period. Is there any players in particular that you want to try and get in? So I'll give you some examples, whether it's a premiership player from another club that you want to try and get him in, like a leader, so you can try and educate the players of how to win close games of football and how to get that successful mentality into their mind. Is there a young player that is kind of starring at the moment that you want to try and get in? I don't know what sort of players the club is looking at, but if you were the coach staff, what sort of player would you want to try and get in?
It's tough because I feel like we've got a few holes in different areas. I think our back six is actually pretty good in terms of maybe a few names. Maybe Mitch McGovern and a few others will be maybe on the chopping block at the end of the year. But for me, it's just, you look at these teams like Port Adelaide, and they have these guys that perform week in and week out. They get no credit and they get wins on the board. I think particularly for Port Adelaide, they've got guys, they've got like Willem Drews and Dylan Williams and all these guys that it's like they're playing their role at the highest level and with ease because their cohesion with the team. I just think I think off field the group is connected 110%. I think they get along with each other extremely well. That's not the issue, but I think there's players I think we can bring into the club that can make it a little bit more uncomfortable in a sense that we're not accepting mediocrity. Like we need a few players that set the standard. In a sense, I think we've got a few players that do. Off the field, obviously, I'd imagine Sam Walsh's and Wiederings and guys have set the standard. But I think we need a few more of those guys. Those 25, 26-year-olds. I don't think we need to go too young. Obviously, we'll still have draft picks. So, it's actually crazy we're talking about this because we're at the start of the year we're saying the list is good, but clearly we're wrong. So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting with what they look at. I know there's a lot of talk about Jade Gresham's and players like that who I think would be handy in the side, but once again you got players coming through the twos like David Cunningham and Jack Martin who can play those exact roles. So it's just a matter of, are they banking on Marchbank and Martin and that to get their bodies right, or are we willing to take the risk and get rid of them and bring in new faces? So, I think our episodes when we get to the trade period and draft will be exciting actually because I think that's end of the year. I know everyone gets frustrated by it in terms of trade period when you've had a failed season and you've got to look to improve, but I think it kind of excites you as a footy fan when you get new faces in the door. So. We need something new, Pato. It can't be brand new. It can't be a new coach. I don't think we need a new coach. I think the pressure's on the assistants, to be fair, who have lacked any type of, moves during the games. And, like we've just seen the same issues on and on again. So, I don't know what to say, but get some new faces and we'll win the flag next year.
So I know that there's a lot of supporters that are mentioning that Richmond went through this phase of they had a year before they missed out of the 2016 season finals, where they played quite well. But of course, they made finals in 2015. We didn't make finals in 2022. So 2016, they had a failed season.
Yep.
Everyone was questioning the coach, blah, blah, blah. Similar, I guess, discussions of the club now with us this year, and now we might transition into next year but I just want to say that we still haven't made finals. So we haven't had that that feeling of course we can say Carlton and Collingwood last year was finals feeling. Of course it was, but it wasn't a final. That's the difference. It wasn't a final. So and you mentioned there about the club potentially clearing out some players. I think the number one thing that we need to do is we do not pay a player over a certain amount of money because we have been so frustratingly just getting players. Oh, he seems all right. He'll be all right in 2 years. Let's pay him $800K.
Yeah.
No, like Mitch McGovern, we paid him $800K as a forward. He's now playing as a defender and he still isn't really living up to that $800K money. We don't want to single out Mitch McGovern. There's so many other players.
It's not his fault. It's not his fault.
So far from his fault.
You get offered $800K a year, you're not going to turn it down. I think
exactly right.
I think that's what annoys me with sometimes fans when we have a go at a player for that. But it's actually on the club. You should be talking about that's the club's issue with Zach Williams and stuff like that. So and at the time, to be fair, I think we got him after the 2018 season. Who was wanting to join Carlton after a 2-win season? Realistically, we had to get someone through the door, and he wanted to come to Carlton to improve us, and we had to throw the money at him. Otherwise, he would have gone somewhere else. So and I think to be fair, I think he had the same money offer from the Eagles that year. And chose to come to Carlton because he wanted to come to a big club and get them back on track, which clearly we haven't yet. So.
And that's also one of the things also where you need to remember that these guys are actually this is their job. So of course if they get offered $800K, of course you're going to take that. But it's so hard to comment on just because we aren't in their positions. So we don't know what they do, but we just think that we pay them $800K, so they should live up to their standards. But I'm well, I mean, the club actually paid them that $800K. You shouldn't be mad at Mitch McGovern. Yes, he might not be fulfilling that $800K that we paid 4 or 5 years ago, but we're still choosing to pay these players the amount of money where they haven't lived up to it. It's the potential. It's always the potential. And I'm just so over the potential. It now needs to be the certainty that, yes, we're going to pay this player this amount of money, and in a few years' time, that's when we that's when we raise the pay packet a little bit. We're not going to pay him 8 years for $1 million. We're going to pay him maybe 2 years on 250K, and then we move on to maybe upping that to 500, rather than paying him 800 for 5 years. And there's players like that everywhere in Carlton, which annoys me. That's one thing that annoys me, because I had this sort of discussion last night with a friend, and it was about how our top end, fantastic. It's a mouth-watering sort of list. But after that top 10, very low. And that's not what good clubs do. That's what good clubs do. They always even it out. And that's why Geelong have been so good, because their players, they get paid for a certain amount of money, not a lot of money, but they want to stay there because they're a successful club and they're after premierships. They're not after money. They're after premierships. That's one thing. So we'll probably start to wrap up the episode now, just because we don't really want to spend too much time in this club, Daffy Boy. But of course, the last thing for you, the last segment, this is probably the only segment that we've really actually set on. But best on ground, if you could say one name, Daffy Boy, that was a positive yesterday, what would you say? Who would you say?
The 2023 John Nichols medalist, Adam Chera.
Wait.
Thought he'd been superb in the midfield this year. I think he's had actually fantastic season. I think it's been under the radar due to our terrible performances. But another name you could say is Brody Kemp. I thought he was great as well. And I thought Wiedering was good too. But I think Chera's just kind of become that midfielder we thought he was going to become, that upper echelon kind of midfielder. And he's really just become, well, he had the skin shaved army haircut going the other night. And no, he's just racking up 30s every game, and his impact with ball in hand has been superb too. And he's that perfect inside and outside midfielder. So I'm looking forward to see how he goes for the next decade or so, because I think he'll be a top player for us if we're gonna be successful.
Yeah.
And just before on your best on ground, just another point. Can we stop talking about flags? We're so far from it. We just need to stop. That's my comment. We just need to stop talking about that.
Yeah, we need to live in the moment. That's the thing. We always look towards 3 or 4 years' time. Why don't you just live in the moment and actually live in right now? We are not good enough. Luke says when he said last year, finals is as our expectations. Don't say that. Don't say that, because you put the pressure on the club for one, and us supporters, we get brainwashed and think, oh my God, we're actually going to play finals this year. We're going to be excited. Then it comes to the time when it's that moment to step up if you want to play finals, and we don't step up. That's the thing. So don't put the pressure on the club. Well, of course you want to try and always, it's a market at the end of the day. It's a marketable business, and that's why we always need to pay our memberships every single year, because we always love this club, and you're always going to get us in. But you don't need to say stuff, because you know that there's enough loyal supporters out there within the club that will always sign on. We always want to hope the best for the club. We're just so over the mediocrity around the whole club, where every single week there is something else to get us back on the bandwagon, in a sense. We're over that shit. We've been through it for 10 years now. We're over it. Now stop living 5 years in the future. Live in the moment. Sort it now. And then you can actually move to next year. That was a bit of a rant, Duffy Boy, but so my best on ground, of course, was, as you said then, I think it has to be Brody Kemp. Adam Chera as well was absolutely fantastic. Jacob Wienering as well. Also, Harry Mackay were a few positives as well. But I think it's Brody Kemp for me. I think he's really found some form, and hopefully from now on, he can really use that confidence to really stay on the side, which I think he will. When he got a couple of weeks ago, I reckon that was completely stiff. So stiff from the guy, especially for a guy that hasn't been in the senior side, and you need to have something different. He's the guy that's actually performing, and he's actually doing his role each and every week. So I reckon he needs to stay in. But David Boy, for the rest of the is there anything else you want to touch on for this episode before we wrap it up?
Just get through this week, Blue Baggers. Get the mental side of your life up and about for next Sunday night, which, oh God, I'm dreading it already. But who knows what'll happen. But to be honest with you, we're probably going to score 50 again and lose. So, and the package will kick 7 or something. So, and Peter Wright will come back just in time to face us. Can't wait.
Can't wait for that. Can't wait for that. Like as you said, I just think that the Carlton supporters just need to try and think about, at the end of the day, it is just football. That's what my mum said also. Like, I've been so like, we're so shit, but mum keeps on saying, it's just football, Mitch. it's not the end
Yeah.
of the world. I'm like, yeah, that's the mentality that I have to see it as. But make sure to all the viewers, like and subscribe. Make sure to do it on YouTube and share this channel around. Also on Spotify as well. But Daffy Boy, absolute pleasure being with you every single episode. And as always, to the baggers, I don't even have it upright. Up the baggers. Not even upright. Up the baggers.